A lonely Comanche found an 18-year-old girl bound to a fence and gave her a name and a place to be. The twin suns of Ralthar burned high in the sky, casting long shadows across the jagged plains. The world was harsh, unforgiving, and silent, except for the occasional groan of shifting rock and the distant howl of a wind that seemed to carry the memory of something ancient. Among the jagged cliffs and red sands rode a lone figure. He was tall and lean, wrapped in the patched leather and cloth of a traveler. His face, weathered by wind and sun, was framed by long, dark hair tied loosely at the back. His eyes, sharp and steady, scanned the horizon with a mixture of caution and curiosity. He was a man of many names on many worlds, but here, on this wild and untamed land, he was simply called Tall Hawk. Tall Hawk had wandered Ralthar for weeks. He had come seeking the stories of the old settlers, relics of human colonies that had long since crumbled beneath the alien sky. He had learned to read the signs of the land, to track the subtle movements of the local fauna, and to anticipate the storms that could swallow a man whole if he was careless. Despite the solitude, he carried a quiet pride in his resilience, a belief that humans could endure even the most alien environments if they relied on their wits and courage. On this morning, the air was still, the heat of the twin suns pressing down like the weight of time itself. As Tall Hawk crested a ridge, he noticed something unusual. A figure in the distance, small against the expanse of red rock and sand, appeared motionless. At first, he thought it might be a statue, a relic left behind by the lost settlers. But as he drew closer, he realized it was alive, human, and in trouble. The figure was a young woman, no older than 17 or 18, crouched beside a twisted metal fence that rose from the sand like the bones of a long-dead animal. Her hair, dark and tangled, fell over her face. She moved as though she were stuck, trying to pull herself free, but the restraints that bound her were unyielding. Her breathing was quick, and her eyes darted around as if searching for danger. Tall Hawk's heart tightened. Though he had seen many strange things on this world, the sight of a human in distress always demanded action. He approached carefully, speaking in a calm voice. "Hey there," he said. "You're safe now, I won't hurt you." The young woman flinched but didn't speak. Her eyes, wide with fear, flicked toward him, then back to the fence. Tall Hawk could see the dried dirt and sand in her hair and on her clothes. She had been there for days, maybe longer. His instincts told him she had survived on little water, relying on her wits and stubbornness alone. "Can you move?" he asked softly. "I'll help." At first, she didn't respond. Then slowly she nodded, a flicker of hope crossing her face. Tall Hawk crouched beside the fence and inspected the bindings. They were crude but strong, fashioned from some kind of flexible metal alloy that resisted bending. He studied the structure carefully, testing it for weaknesses. "You're clever," he said with a small smile. "But clever doesn't always beat strength. We'll need patience." Hours passed as he worked, using tools scavenged from his pack and rocks from the surrounding terrain. The young woman watched, silent at first, then gradually began to assist, her hands moving with growing confidence. Tall Hawk could sense her resilience, her determination to survive, and it filled him with admiration. It was the same spark that had kept him alive in countless harsh worlds. Finally, with a loud snap and a hiss of energy, the restraints gave way. The young woman collapsed to the sand, breathing heavily but free. Tall Hawk reached out and helped her to her feet. "Name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then whispered, "Mara." Tall Hawk nodded. "Mara, it's a good name. You're going to need one out here." Mara looked around the barren plains, the harsh light of the twin suns casting her small shadow over the red sands. She had been lost for so long, and for the first time someone had offered her more than mere survival. Tall Hawk could see the weight of loneliness in her eyes, the burden of isolation that stretched back through weeks, perhaps months. "You need water," he said, "and food." "Then we can talk." He led her to a small cave that opened beneath a jagged outcrop. Inside, the air was cool and still, a welcome refuge from the relentless heat outside. He pulled out a small water purifier and some nutrient bars, sharing them with Mara. She accepted them with trembling hands, grateful but wary. As they ate, Tall Hawk began to ask gentle questions, learning what little she would share. Mara had been part of a small group of settlers who had tried to colonize a distant valley. A sudden sandstorm had destroyed their camp, scattering the survivors. She had wandered alone ever since, struggling against the alien terrain, the strange wildlife, and the unforgiving climate. Tall Hawk listened without judgment. He understood loss. He had faced it in his own life many times over. He also understood hope. Hope was the most human of all traits, and it was what allowed people to endure worlds that were otherwise impossible. "You're strong," he said finally. "Stronger than you realize. That's why you survived." Myra looked at him, uncertain. I don't know if I can do more than survive," Tall Hawk smiled. "Survival is only the beginning. Humans are kind. We do more than survive. We adapt. We endure. We rise." Outside, the twin suns began to sink toward the horizon, casting the plains in a fiery glow. Tall Hawk and Mara stepped out of the cave, watching as the light played over the jagged rocks and shifting sands. The world was dangerous, but it was also beautiful. And for the first time, Mara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: possibility. Tall Hawk had brought her to safety, but more than that, he had given her a name, a place, and a sense that she mattered. In this vast, alien world, that was a gift more precious than any technology or treasure. As night fell, the temperature dropping rapidly, Tall Hawk built a small fire. Myra sat beside it, the warmth seeping into her bones. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel a measure of comfort. Tall Hawk looked at her, noting the resilience in her posture, the cautious hope in her eyes. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. Ralthar was unforgiving, and even two people were vulnerable against the storms and creatures that roamed the plains. But he also knew that together they stood a chance. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll move toward the highlands. There's water there and shelter. You'll see the world isn't just survival, it's life, and life is what we make of it." Myra nodded, her lips barely forming a smile. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time she wasn't alone. Tall Hawk had found her not just as a survivor, but as someone who could belong, who could matter, who could rise above the harshness of the world. The fire crackled, the twin moons of Ralthar rising to cast their pale light over the red plains. And as Mara sat beside Tall Hawk, she felt a quiet determination stir within her. The alien world was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but it was also theirs to explore, to understand, and perhaps to call home. Somewhere deep in the plains, a distant howl echoed, a reminder of the dangers that awaited. Mara tightened her hands around the warmth of the fire, ready to face whatever came next. For the first time, she believed that humans could thrive here, even on a world that seemed determined to crush them. Tall Hawk looked at the horizon, eyes narrowed against the fading light. There were challenges ahead, yes, but also opportunities. Humanity was small in the cosmos, but it was resilient. It adapted, endured, and overcame. And in Mara, he saw the same spark that had carried countless humans across stars, through storms, and into the unknown. Ralthar was wild. Ralthar was dangerous. But Ralthar would not break them. Together they would rise. The morning light on Ralthar was sharp and bright, cutting through the thin veil of mist that lingered over the jagged plains. Tall Hawk rose first, moving quietly as the fire died down to embers. The young woman, Mara, was already awake, her eyes wide as she stared at the horizon. She had slept better than she had in weeks, though her muscles ached from the long time she had spent bound and the brief but strenuous day before. Tall Hawk handed her a small cup of water, the liquid cool and refreshing. "Drink," he said. "We have a long journey ahead and the highlands aren't close. The world may seem empty, but it has ways of testing those who wander it." Myra took the cup with both hands, feeling the warmth of the sun on her back and the strange thrill of being alive on a world so different from anything she had known. I don't even know if I can do this," she admitted, voice soft. "You can," Tall Hawk said firmly, yet kindly. "I've seen humans survive worse than this. Humans endure because we want more than just survival. We want to live. We want to see the horizon and reach it, no matter what it takes." She nodded slowly, letting his words sink in. In her heart, she felt a flicker of hope. He was right. If she could survive this long alone, she could face what lay ahead. They packed the small supplies they had. Tall Hawk carried a compact solar-powered toolkit, water containers, and a few preserved nutrient packs. Mara carried what little she could manage. Her belongings had been minimal, but after days of wandering, every item felt precious. They left the cave behind, moving carefully across the jagged terrain. The ground was uneven, covered with jagged rocks that could cut through boots if one misstepped, and sand that shifted like a living thing. As they moved, Tall Hawk taught Mara to read the signs of the land. "See these marks in the sand?" he asked, pointing to long, thin grooves. "Those are from the clawed grazers that move in packs. They avoid humans most of the time, but if you follow their paths carefully, you can find water. Myra followed his instructions, her movements slow at first, then more confident. She began to notice patterns, learning to anticipate danger, to observe without panicking. The alien landscape was no longer just a threat. It was a puzzle, one that could be solved if one was patient and attentive. Hours passed, and the heat of the twin suns pressed down more fiercely. The red plains stretched endlessly, dotted with jagged rock formations that rose like teeth from the earth. Mara began to tire, her pace slowing. Tall Hawk noticed but said nothing at first, letting her find her rhythm. Eventually, he knelt beside a small ridge and indicated a shallow depression in the rock. "Rest," he said. "There's a hidden stream beneath that rock. The water is cold, but it's clean. We'll drink, refill our containers, and continue. Survival isn't about rushing. It's about knowing when to move and when to pause." Myra drank deeply, feeling the water revive her spirit as well as her body. She marveled at how the alien world could seem so deadly and yet provide for those who knew where to look. Tall Hawk smiled faintly, noticing the small smile crossing her face. It was a moment of connection, a quiet proof that she was beginning to understand the rhythms of Ralthar. They moved on. As the day progressed, the terrain grew rougher. The plains gave way to rocky ridges, cliffs, and narrow canyons. The air was thinner here, cooler, but filled with the hum of wind across the rocks. Strange creatures could be seen in the distance, long-legged grazers with silver scales, small flitting birds with translucent wings, and something larger moving carefully along the cliffs, too distant to identify clearly. Tall Hawk kept Mara close. "Observe first," he said. "Don't rush. We are guests here, not rulers." Mara nodded, feeling her fear transform into cautious curiosity. She began to spot the creatures before Tall Hawk did sometimes, her senses sharpening with every step. For the first time, she felt capable, not just surviving, but learning and adapting. As they climbed higher, they reached a narrow canyon that snaked through the rock like a jagged vein. The shadows were deep here, the twin suns unable to penetrate fully. The wind howled through the canyon, creating strange, echoing sounds. Mara shivered slightly. Tall Hawk put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay close. The canyon can be dangerous, but it also hides resources. Watch for water seeps, for plants that hold moisture, and for the paths that the grazers make." They moved slowly, carefully stepping over uneven rock and avoiding loose stones. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the canyon. Mara froze. Tall Hawk crouched, scanning the shadows. A pair of luminous eyes glinted from the darkness ahead. "Predators," he whispered. "They hunt alone, rarely in groups. Watch my movement. Don't make sudden gestures." Mara's heart pounded. The creature stepped forward, its shape tall and lithe, covered in dark scales that shimmered under the light filtering through the canyon. Its head was narrow, with sharp teeth glinting as it sniffed the air. Tall Hawk moved slowly, deliberately, guiding Mara behind a rock. The creature prowled, circling the edge of the canyon, and then with a sudden leap it vanished into the shadows above. Mara exhaled slowly, her body trembling with adrenaline. "You see," Tall Hawk said quietly. "We survived because we stayed calm, observed, and respected the predator. Humans have that ability. You have that ability." Mara nodded, a sense of pride mingled with relief. She realized that fear could be useful if channeled properly. It sharpened the mind and honed instincts. They pressed on, and eventually the canyon opened into a wide valley. The land here was different, more forgiving, with patches of vegetation and small pools of water reflecting the twin suns. Mara's eyes widened. Life existed here, resilient and strange, defying the harshness of the plains. Tall Hawk led her to a cluster of large, hollowed rocks where small animals had burrowed. "We can make camp here tonight. Water, food, and shelter," he said. "It's safe, though not perfect. We'll rest, recover, and continue to the highlands tomorrow." As they settled, Myra spoke quietly, almost to herself. "I never thought I would find anything like this. A place to rest, someone who cares. I thought I was alone forever." Tall Hawk glanced at her, eyes softening. "You were never alone. Humans leave traces, and you followed them, whether you knew it or not. And now you have me. But more than that, you have yourself. That is the greatest strength of all." Night fell over the valley. The twin moons rose, casting a silver glow over the rocks and vegetation. Myra lay close to the fire, feeling warmth seep into her body, and listened to the wind through the valley. She thought about the journey ahead, about the highlands and the unknown creatures and storms that awaited them. And yet she felt a quiet confidence growing inside her. She could face them. She would face them. Tall Hawk watched the night sky, the constellations unfamiliar but beautiful. Humans, he murmured to himself, we adapt, we endure, we rise. In the distance, a shadow moved, a large creature, cautious but curious, watching the humans in the valley. Mara noticed it first, pointing it out to Tall Hawk. They're observing us, she whispered. Yes, he said. The world watches us as we watch it, but remember this, observation is the first step toward understanding. Understanding is the first step toward thriving. The night passed with little disturbance, save for the occasional howl of distant predators. Mara slept more soundly, her dreams filled with strange landscapes, endless skies, and the promise of discovery. Tall Hawk kept watch, vigilant, but also quietly proud. She was learning, adapting, growing. By morning, Mara was already awake, examining the plants and small pools of water. There's life here, she said softly. I didn't expect it. Ralthar is full of surprises, Tall Hawk replied, but you'll see more. And every step you take, every observation, every choice, it will shape you. Humans shape their worlds as much as worlds shape humans. Together, they packed their camp, filling their water containers and securing their supplies. The highlands loomed in the distance, jagged peaks rising into the sky, promising both danger and refuge. Tall Hawk led the way, Mara following closely, her senses sharper, her resolve firmer. As they walked, Mara realized something profound. She was no longer merely surviving. She was learning, she was growing. She was becoming part of a story larger than herself, one where humans did more than endure, they thrived. Tall Hawk glanced at her from time to time, silently acknowledging her progress. He had seen many humans struggle in alien worlds, many falter, many give up. But Mara had the spark, the resilience, the determination that set humans apart. The journey to the highlands would be long, fraught with challenges. But they would face it together, as humans had faced countless trials before, resilient, adaptable, and unyielding. The highlands of Ralthar were closer now, rising jagged and imposing against the sky. Tall Hawk and Mara climbed steadily, their pace careful but determined. The terrain was rougher than the plains, full of sharp rocks and loose gravel that shifted beneath their boots. Mara's muscles ached, but she moved with purpose, each step a lesson in endurance. "Watch your footing here," Tall Hawk warned, pointing to a steep incline. "One wrong move and we could tumble 100 meters. The highlands are beautiful, but they do not forgive mistakes." Mara nodded, gripping the rock face with both hands as she pulled herself up. The wind here was stronger, cold against her skin, whipping through her hair and rattling the loose stones beneath them. She shivered but felt alive. The fear she once carried alone had been replaced by awareness, by the understanding that careful observation and patience could save her. "Do you feel it?" she asked quietly, her voice carried away by the wind. Tall Hawk looked at her, curious. "Feel what?" "The change," Mara said. "The air, it's sharper, the sky looks closer, everything feels different here." "That is the highlands," he said. "The air is thin, the sun stronger. Life here is harder, but it survives, and so can we." They continued, finding small ledges and natural terraces to rest on. From these vantage points, Mara could see the plains below, vast and red, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The view was both humbling and inspiring. "I can't believe how far we've come," Mara said softly. "I never imagined I'd leave the plains and still be alive." Tall Hawk smiled. "Humans have a remarkable ability to endure. You survived alone for days, perhaps weeks. That is no small feat. Every day you made it, every decision you took brought you here. And now we move forward stronger than before." As they neared the first plateau, the wind brought strange sounds. High-pitched shrieks echoed across the rocks, followed by a chorus of rustling wings. Mara froze. "Birds," she whispered, though she could see nothing yet. "Not ordinary birds," Tall Hawk said, eyes scanning the horizon. "Ralthar is home to many creatures that can test human patience and courage. Observe, do not panic. Remember, we are guests in this world, not masters." From a cliffside above them, several winged creatures emerged. They were large, with long, slender bodies covered in shimmering scales that reflected the sunlight. Their wings were translucent, catching the light like glass. They circled above, their shrieks loud but seemingly purposeless. Mara watched, fascinated rather than afraid. "They're beautiful," she murmured. "Almost like they're made of light." Tall Hawk nodded. Yes, beauty and danger often come together on alien worlds. Observe patterns. Notice how they move, how they react. That knowledge is power. As they climbed, Myra began to notice subtle tracks in the rocky soil. Small, clawed footprints led toward the plateau. She pointed them out to Tall Hawk. Grazers, he said, crouching to examine the tracks. They're cautious here because predators are common, but they go to higher ground for water. We might find a spring if we follow these signs. Excited by the prospect of water, Myra quickened her pace, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. They reached a small cluster of rocks that created a natural basin. Water trickled through, pooling into a shallow, clear stream. Myra knelt beside it, cupping the water in her hands. The cold, sweet liquid revived her spirit, and she laughed softly. "This is incredible," she said. "I never thought I'd find anything like this on Ralthar." Tall Hawk smiled. "You learn to see what others miss. Humans adapt. You did this, Myra. You are learning the world, and it is teaching you in return." They filled their containers, drank their fill, and rested. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the plateau. Tall Hawk and Myra prepared a small camp, using rocks to shield themselves from the wind. Myra worked carefully, placing small stones around the fire and arranging their supplies. As the fire crackled, Myra spoke quietly. "Tall Hawk, why did you help me? You didn't have to." Tall Hawk stared into the flames, considering, "Because survival is not enough. Humans do not just survive, we help each other endure. We create meaning, even in worlds that seem impossible. You survived alone, but life is meant to be shared. That is why I offered you a place to stand, a name to call your own." Myra felt warmth beyond the fire's glow. For the first time, she understood that connection mattered as much as survival. She was not just a wanderer anymore, she was part of something greater. Night fell fully, the twin moons casting silver light over the highlands. Shadows moved among the rocks, creatures observing silently. Myra felt the subtle tension of life around her, the predators, the prey, the unknown, but she was no longer paralyzed by fear. She had learned to move carefully, to observe, to think. Tall Hawk remained vigilant, but his mind was also calm. He knew the night would pass with challenges, but he also knew they were ready. Myra had grown stronger with each step, each observation, each decision. She was learning not just to survive, but to thrive. As they slept, a sudden rustle echoed from above. Myra awoke, eyes wide, and saw a small group of creatures descending from the cliffs. They were long, thin, with glowing eyes and sharp claws, moving with silent precision. Tall Hawk stirred, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Stay calm," he whispered. "Observe first. They may not see us as prey. Remember, knowledge is the greatest weapon." The creatures approached the edge of their camp, sniffing and watching. Myra's heart raced, but she followed Tall Hawk's advice, moving slowly and silently. The creatures eventually lost interest, moving on to hunt elsewhere. Myra exhaled, relief washing over her. "You see," Tall Hawk said quietly, "observation and patience, that is how humans endure where others might fail. You learned that tonight. You survived not just the environment, but your fear." Myra nodded, feeling pride mingled with awe. She realized that fear was not a weakness, it was a tool. It sharpened senses, focused attention, and taught respect for the world. The next morning they resumed their climb, the highlands stretching toward the clouds above. The air grew thinner, colder, and the wind more unpredictable. Myra's steps were careful, her breathing steady, her mind alert. She had learned the patterns of the land, the rhythms of Ralthar, and the silent language of its creatures. As they reached a plateau near the top of a jagged ridge, a vast expanse revealed itself. The highlands were alive with strange, resilient life. Trees with silver bark and translucent leaves swayed in the wind. Streams ran clear and fast, feeding small lakes. Creatures grazed cautiously, some watching the humans curiously. Myra knelt beside a small stream, feeling the cold water on her hands. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Tall Hawk nodded. "It is. Life always finds a way, even in the harshest conditions. Humans are part of that pattern. We endure, adapt, and rise. That is what makes us remarkable." Myra looked up at him, understanding finally settling in. The journey ahead would be difficult, full of dangers and challenges, but she was no longer afraid. She had learned to trust herself, to observe, and to act. She had learned that humans could shape their worlds, even alien ones, through courage, wisdom, and perseverance. They set up camp near a natural cave that overlooked a small valley. Myra arranged their supplies, and Tall Hawk gathered firewood. As the sun began to set, they watched the horizon, the twin moons rising in the distance. "Tomorrow," Tall Hawk said, "we continue." The highlands are not yet fully explored. There are creatures, storms, and challenges waiting, but there is also opportunity. Life, food, shelter, everything we need is here if we pay attention and act wisely. Mara smiled, feeling the warmth of hope alongside the firelight. "I'm ready," she said. "I want to learn, I want to see what humans can do here." Tall Hawk's eyes softened. "And you will. Humans endure because we seek, we explore, and we rise. That is who we are." The night passed with no incident, the creatures of the highlands keeping their distance. Mara slept deeply, her dreams filled with strange landscapes, unknown skies, and the promise of discovery. She was no longer merely surviving. She was learning, growing, and becoming part of something larger. By morning, she woke before Tall Hawk, observing the valley below. She noticed tracks in the soil, subtle patterns in the plants, and the movement of small creatures. She felt a thrill of understanding. The world was not just something to endure, it was something to read, to learn from, and to adapt to. Tall Hawk watched her from a distance, silently acknowledging her growth. She had come far from the frightened girl who had been trapped on the plains. She had become resilient, observant, and capable. She was human, and that meant she could rise. The journey ahead would test them, but Tall Hawk knew they were ready. Together they would face storms, predators, and the unknown. Together they would thrive. And for Mara, that realization was more powerful than anything she had ever known. She was no longer alone. She was human, and humans endure. The wind in the highlands had grown stronger, carrying with it the sharp scent of rain and the cold bite of altitude. Tall Hawk and Mara moved cautiously along a narrow ridge, the valley below shrinking into a mosaic of silver-leaved trees and winding streams. The highlands were unforgiving, but alive with life, a place where every creature had adapted to survive the harsh climate. Mara had grown more confident with each day, moving with careful precision, observing the world around her and learning from every detail. Tall Hawk paused and scanned the horizon. "Storms are coming," he said. "Ralthar's weather is unpredictable." One moment calm, the next fierce. "We must find shelter soon." Mara squinted at the distant clouds, dark and rolling. "Do storms hit fast here?" she asked. "They do," Tall Hawk said. "They can bring rain, hail, or even winds strong enough to sweep a human off a cliff. That is why we respect the land. Knowledge and preparation are our best tools." They quickened their pace, moving toward a cluster of jagged cliffs that promised some protection. As they descended a steep path, Mara's foot slipped on loose gravel. She caught herself against a rock, heart pounding. "You're learning," Tall Hawk said gently, offering his hand. "Every slip is a lesson. The land teaches patience, focus, and observation. We adapt or we fail." Mara nodded, feeling a surge of determination. She had survived countless dangers already, storms, predators, harsh terrain, and yet she was learning to thrive. She trusted Tall Hawk, but she also trusted herself, and that was a new, empowering feeling. As they reached the cliffs, they discovered a natural cave partially hidden by a jutting rock formation. The entrance was narrow but deep, offering protection from the wind. Mara examined it carefully, noting small cracks and footholds in the stone. "It's safe," she said. "We can stay here until the storm passes," Tall Hawk agreed. "Good observation. Always check before settling. Even the smallest weakness can turn dangerous." Inside, the cave was dry and cool, a welcome relief from the gusting wind outside. They set up their small camp, using rocks to shield their supplies and arranging firewood in a sheltered corner. Mara worked methodically, gathering stones and debris to reinforce their space. She had grown confident in her movements, careful yet efficient, and Tall Hawk watched with quiet pride. As night fell, the storm arrived. The twin moons rose, but clouds quickly covered them, and rain began to lash against the rocks. The wind howled through the highlands, a constant roar that shook the cave walls. Myra huddled near the fire, listening to the sound of nature's fury. She had feared storms before, but now, with knowledge and preparation, she felt safe, not powerless. Tall Hawk spoke quietly. "Humans endure because we prepare, because we think ahead. Fear is natural, but it can be managed. Observation and planning make fear into a tool rather than a threat." Mara nodded, absorbing his words. She realized that every day in Ralthar had been a lesson in adaptation. She had learned to read the land, predict movement, and survive in ways she had never imagined. The storm, rather than a threat, became another challenge to overcome, another puzzle to understand. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the highlands washed in silver light. Rain had filled small pools in the rocks, and the vegetation glistened under the twin suns. Mara stepped outside, inhaling deeply. The air smelled fresh and alive. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a narrow stream forming from the runoff. "We can refill our water containers and collect fresh plants." Tall Hawk smiled. "Precisely. Even a storm brings opportunity. Humans survive because we see potential in every challenge." They spent the morning gathering water, examining edible plants, and mapping the terrain. Mara's eyes had grown sharp, catching details Tall Hawk himself had missed. The subtle slope of the land, the direction of water flow, even small animal tracks. By midday, they were ready to continue their climb. The highlands were higher now, cliffs rising sharply, and the air thinner with each step. Mara felt the burn in her legs and lungs, but pressed on, her determination stronger than her exhaustion. As they rounded a jagged ridge, they saw movement ahead. A large creature, unlike anything Mara had seen, was standing near a ledge. Its body was covered in tough, dark scales, and it had 4 legs with broad, clawed feet. Its head was elongated with a pair of horns curving back, and its eyes glowed faintly in the sunlight. The creature was observing them, and its presence sent a shiver of tension through the air. "Predator or herbivore?" Mara whispered, instinctively crouching. "Both can be dangerous," Tall Hawk said. "Observation is key. Let's see how it behaves before making any moves." They moved slowly, keeping low. Mara's heart raced, but she remembered everything Tall Hawk had taught her: observe, analyze, and act with patience. The creature watched them, its head tilting slightly, then it turned and moved toward a cluster of rocks. It seemed to ignore them, focused on something else entirely. "See," Tall Hawk whispered. "Patience and observation. Not every creature is a threat. But knowledge allows us to respond when danger arises." Mara exhaled, feeling her confidence grow. She was no longer merely reacting to the world. She was reading it, understanding it, and anticipating it. They continued upward, reaching a narrow pass where the wind funneled between cliffs like a living thing. The path was treacherous, with loose stones and sheer drops on either side. Mara moved carefully, testing each foothold. Tall Hawk guided her where necessary, but she led many steps herself, showing remarkable skill and judgment. Suddenly, a section of the path gave way. Rocks tumbled down the cliffside with a deafening roar. Mara's foot caught, and she nearly fell. Tall Hawk lunged, grabbing her arm just in time. "Careful," he shouted, pulling her to stable ground. Her heart pounded, but she nodded. I understand now. I must always check, always plan." Tall Hawk smiled. "Exactly. Humans endure because we think, because we act with foresight. Every step we take shapes our survival." After recovering, they moved more cautiously, using larger rocks for stability and avoiding loose gravel. Mara's confidence grew with every successful step, her fear replaced by focus. By late afternoon, they reached a plateau with a breathtaking view. The highlands stretched endlessly, jagged peaks rising into clouds, rivers winding through valleys, and forests shimmering under the twin suns. Mara felt a sense of awe and humility. This is incredible," she said. "I never imagined a world could look like this." Tall Hawk nodded. "The universe is vast and full of surprises. Humans endure because we are curious, because we seek to understand and adapt. You are learning that now, Mara." As they settled near a natural rock formation, Mara noticed a small cluster of glowing plants. They pulsed faintly with light, strange and beautiful. She reached out, feeling their soft surface. "Life finds a way," Tall Hawk said softly. "Even here where it seems impossible, life survives, and so do we. Humans endure because we do not give up, because we observe, learn, and act." Night fell again, and Mara and Tall Hawk watched the twin moons rise over the peaks. The highlands were alive with sound, the rustle of leaves, the calls of distant creatures, and the whisper of the wind through cliffs. Mara felt a profound sense of connection to this alien world. "I feel part of this now," she said. "I'm learning to live here, not just survive." Tall Hawk looked at her with quiet pride. "Exactly. Humans endure not only by surviving, but by understanding and growing. That is what makes us remarkable." As they rested, Mara reflected on their journey. She had faced storms, predators, treacherous terrain, and fear itself. And she had not only survived, she had learned, adapted, and grown stronger. She realized that humanity's greatest power was its ability to endure and rise above adversity. Tall Hawk remained vigilant, watching the plateau for movement. He knew challenges would come. The highlands were unpredictable, and Ralthar tested every traveler. But he also knew they were ready. Mara had learned quickly, showing resilience, courage, and intelligence. Together, they were capable of facing whatever the world threw at them. By morning, they prepared to move deeper into the highlands. Mara packed their supplies, checked their water containers, and examined the path ahead. She was no longer afraid of the unknown. She was ready to face it with knowledge and preparation. Tall Hawk watched her, silently acknowledging her growth. She had transformed from a frightened girl into a capable survivor, someone who understood the value of observation, patience, and courage. She was human, and that meant she could rise. The journey ahead would be difficult. They would encounter more predators, harsher weather, and treacherous terrain. But they were ready. Together, they would endure, adapt, and thrive. And for Mara, that realization was more powerful than any fear or challenge. She was no longer merely surviving. She was learning, growing, and becoming part of something larger than herself. She was human, and humans endure. The highlands of Ralthar stretched endlessly, jagged peaks piercing the sky, rivers carving deep valleys, and strange, silver-leaved trees swaying in the wind. Tall Hawk and Mara had climbed higher than they ever imagined, every step teaching them the subtle rhythms of this alien world. The plateau before them promised the final leg of their journey, a valley rumored to shelter both life and safety. Tall Hawk paused on a narrow ridge, the wind tugging at his cloak. "This is it," he said. "The valley below is our destination, but the path is treacherous. One misstep could send us sliding down cliffs or into unknown danger. Stay close, observe, and trust your instincts." Mara nodded, feeling a mixture of anticipation and determination. She had come far from the frightened girl who had been trapped on the plains. She had survived storms, predators, and alien terrain. She had learned to read the land, anticipate threats, and act decisively. Now she felt the surge of confidence that came with mastery, the knowledge that she could endure and rise. The descent was difficult. Loose rocks and steep inclines made each step precarious. Mara moved carefully, her eyes scanning for loose gravel and hidden footholds. Tall Hawk followed closely, watching her movements, offering guidance when necessary. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. A small section of the ridge crumbled, sending a cascade of stones tumbling down the slope. Mara stumbled, and Tall Hawk grabbed her arm just in time, anchoring her against a jagged rock. "Careful," he shouted. "Patience, observation saves lives." Mara took a deep breath, steadying herself. I understand now," she said. "Every step matters. I must watch and think." Together they moved slowly, testing each foothold before committing weight. The ridge narrowed, the wind howled, and the cliffs on either side seemed to drop endlessly. Mara's muscles ached, but she felt alive in a way she had never known. Every sense was heightened, every decision critical. Finally, they reached a narrow ledge overlooking the valley. Below, a vibrant ecosystem spread out. A river winding through lush vegetation, small groves of trees, and creatures moving cautiously among the rocks. Mara's eyes widened. "It's incredible," she whispered. "Life thrives here," Tall Hawk nodded. "Yes, even in harsh conditions, life finds a way. Humans do the same. That is why you are here, Mara. You adapted, endured, and grew. You are ready for the challenges of this world." As they descended toward the valley, Mara noticed tracks in the soil. Small grazers had passed this way, followed by larger predators. She pointed them out to Tall Hawk, who nodded approvingly. "Excellent observation," he said. "Understanding movement patterns helps us predict danger and opportunity. Humans endure because we learn, adapt, and act wisely." They continued cautiously, entering the valley. The air was warmer, the wind calmer, and the twin suns reflected off streams and pools of water. Myra felt a sense of awe and belonging. This was no longer a world of survival alone. It was a place where humans could thrive. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed through the valley. Myra froze, her eyes scanning the terrain. A large predator emerged from the trees, its dark scales glistening in the sunlight. It was massive, with claws capable of tearing through rock and flesh alike. Its eyes locked on the humans. Tall Hawk stepped in front of Myra, calm and deliberate. "Observe," he said. "We are not helpless. Every predator can be understood, avoided, or outsmarted. Stay close and watch my lead." The predator moved slowly, circling, assessing. Myra noticed the tracks and vegetation patterns, understanding its behavior. It was testing them, not immediately attacking. She felt a surge of confidence. She knew what to do. Tall Hawk gestured for her to move toward a cluster of large rocks. "Use the terrain," he whispered. "Height and cover give advantage." Mara followed, placing each foot carefully, keeping low and steady. The predator paused, then lunged toward a shadowy area where Tall Hawk had anticipated it would go. Mara watched in awe as Tall Hawk guided it away from their path using careful movement and strategic positioning. "You see," he said, "humans endure because we understand, predict, and act. Courage alone is not enough. Knowledge and action together are power." Mara's heart raced, but she nodded. She felt the truth of his words deep in her bones. Humans were small against the vast universe, yet capable of shaping their fate through intellect, observation, and determination. The predator finally lost interest, retreating into the trees. Mara exhaled, relief mingled with exhilaration. We did it," she whispered. "Yes," Tall Hawk said, "but remember, survival is not a single event, it is constant. Observation, learning, and adaptation are what keep us alive, and you have mastered that already." They moved deeper into the valley, finding a natural spring where water pooled beneath a rock formation. Mara drank deeply, feeling strength return to her limbs. Tall Hawk checked the surroundings, ensuring no hidden threats. "This valley is remarkable," Mara said. "It has water, plants, life. It could sustain humans." Tall Hawk smiled. "It can, but life here is not without challenge. We must respect it, understand it, and act wisely. That is what makes humans endure where others fail." They spent the afternoon exploring, finding edible plants, observing animal behavior, and mapping the terrain. Mara's confidence grew with every discovery. She understood the patterns of the grazers, the habits of predators, and the rhythms of the highlands. She was no longer merely surviving, she was thriving. As the sun began to set, the twin moons rising, Mara and Tall Hawk found a sheltered spot for the night. Mara arranged supplies, while Tall Hawk gathered firewood. The valley was alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves, the calls of distant creatures, and the whisper of the wind. Mara felt a sense of belonging she had never known. "Tall Hawk," she said softly, "I think I understand now. Humans endure not just by surviving, but by learning, observing, and acting. We can face anything if we think, prepare, and adapt." Tall Hawk nodded, pride in his eyes. "Exactly. Humans are remarkable because we rise. The universe tests us, challenges us, and we respond. You have learned that, you have endured, and you have grown stronger than you realize." Night fell fully, and the valley was bathed in silver moonlight. Mara looked out across the streams and trees, feeling the pulse of life around her. She realized that Ralthar was not a place to fear. It was a place to understand, to explore, and to master. By morning, they prepared to move toward the heart of the valley. Mara checked their supplies, refilled water containers, and examined the terrain. She was confident now, ready to face challenges with knowledge and skill. Tall Hawk watched her silently, acknowledging her transformation. She had grown from a frightened girl into a capable, observant, and resilient human. She had endured storms, predators, and treacherous terrain. She had learned the rhythms of the land and the behavior of its creatures, and she had discovered the strength within herself. As they moved forward, Mara felt a surge of hope and purpose. The highlands of Ralthar were vast and dangerous, but she was no longer afraid. She had learned that humans endure not only by surviving, but by observing, learning, and acting. And she had learned that together, humans could face any challenge, adapt to any environment, and rise above adversity. At the center of the valley, they discovered a large plateau with natural terraces, pools of water, and abundant plant life. Mara looked around in awe. This could be home," she whispered. Tall Hawk nodded. "Yes, but more than that, it is proof that humans endure. We adapt, we observe, we learn, and we rise. This valley, this world, it does not defeat us. We make it part of our story." Mara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had survived alone, been rescued, learned to endure, and grown stronger with every challenge. She had discovered not just her own strength, but the power of humans to thrive in even the harshest worlds. As they settled for the evening, Mara looked at Tall Hawk. "Thank you," she said quietly, "not just for saving me, but for teaching me, for showing me how humans endure." Tall Hawk smiled. "You did this yourself, Mara. I guided you, but the courage, the patience, the wisdom, it was yours. That is what makes humans remarkable. We endure, adapt, and rise. And now you know it too." The twin moons rose over the plateau, casting silver light over the valley. Mara felt a deep connection to this alien world and to the human spirit that had carried her through every trial. She realized that survival was only the beginning. Humanity's true power was in its ability to observe, understand, adapt, and rise above any challenge. Tall Hawk and Myra sat together, watching the valley, feeling the pulse of life around them. Ralthar had tested them, and they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable. Myra had discovered her own strength and the enduring power of humans. The journey was complete, but their story had only begun. Together, they had survived, adapted, and thrived. And Mara knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, humans could endure. And on that plateau, under the light of twin moons, she felt the quiet certainty of one truth. Humans endure, humans rise, and humans thrive.